Good morning. Hi,
Morning.
today is Sunday, April 23rd. Um, Welcome back to class. It's been a few weeks. We will start by making our aspirations, set our intentions. Victoria's going to talk for a bit. She has to split early, and then we'll meditate and take some questions. There's a Q&A function. You can ask questions at any point, and we'll try to get to them later. This prayer is called the Four Immeasurables, which is a prayer that's very common at the beginning of uh, Buddhist practice, meditation practice, or any practice. May all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering.
May all beings be
Not
never
be separated
separated
from
from
the happiness
happiness,
that
which
has
is
never
free
known
from
suffering.
sin.
May
May
they
they
rest
rest
in
in
equanimity,
equanimity,
free from
free from
attachment,
attachment,
anger,
anger,
and
and
aversion.
aversion.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. It's been a couple of weeks, and last time we spoke, well, we had Vesna Wallace, who is so brilliant, and we will speak about that teaching that she gave us again. But the last time we spoke, Michael and I were speaking on. We finished with four immeasurables, and we will return to that as well in our next session. But I wanted to speak today again to refresh our understanding that awareness is not the same as our conceptual mind. Awareness is something that is always there in all the events of our life, all the experiences, all the thoughts, all the judgments, all the labels, all the constructs, including the construct of myself, what I am, and the other. All of these take place within the space of awareness. Awareness is like the sky, and the events, the little bubbles that pop up, because our awareness has the capacity to illuminate that portion and draw our attention to one specific narrow thing. They're like clouds. All these mental and physical events, actually all the physical events, are experienced by us also. As I mean, experience is something that happens on the level of perception. Perceptions are mental events. Perceptions are complex mental structures that have portion of some kind of a physiological experience, but all of that gets interpreted into meaningful experience, into cognitive structures, and that's what experience is. So therefore, all things are mental events. But mental events, like I said, are clouds, and awareness is this. It's awareness is compared to space or the sky. When Tibetans say sky, they mean infinite space of awareness, not just some kind of a layer, atmospheric layer of a single planet. No, by space, they mean infinite capacity to include anything and everything. So we cannot think of anything occurring of any kind anywhere at any time that is not going to occur in space. Our bodies are in space, our thoughts are in space, there's space between our organs, our lungs have space. Space is something that is not coined, is not explained, is not bottled, is not sold. Space is something that holds everything, has infinite capacity for everything. At the same time, we cannot really define it or cut it or market it or whatever. We can attempt, but um, again, it would be a cloud in the sky. So with that in mind, uh, Michael and I were looking at teachings that Garchen Rinpoche gave recently, and I wanted to speak to a couple of things that he addressed as something very important. Uh, Buddhism is primarily concerned with our liberation of minds of all sentient beings from ignorance and afflictions which we create based on that ignorance, that cause and perpetuate the endless wheel of the six types of realms of samsara. The 6 types, we don't have to get into it, but the 2 types that we know are our own human realm and animal realm. The human realm is characterized by desire, and animal realm is characterized by the affliction of ignorance. We know these two, but we also know beings who are in hell realms, addicts, people who suffer enormously. We know beings who are afflicted by jealousy continuously, who feel like they lack things all the time. That is what is in Buddhism referred to as the realm of pretas, hungry ghosts, because there is never any saturation, there's never any satiation. Anyway, it is based on ignorance and the 5 afflictive emotions that samsara is caused and perpetuated. Another word for samsara is simply suffering. So to be liberated from ignorance, from self-grasping, the 5 afflicted emotions, is to be liberated from suffering. And this is what Buddhism is concerned with. All the skillful means, all the things we talk about, the 84,000 teachings that the Buddha gave, are concerned with liberation. And what is this liberation from? Again, in very, very simple way, liberation is from the mind of self-grasping, this, constant creation of cloud level of ego and self-grasping, me, mine, and the 5 afflictive emotions that are based on this primary ignorance of me, mine. This is when the little clouds want us to believe that there is no layer beyond that, or that they're self-standing and free. But when the airplane goes, airplane being our meditation, the path of the practitioner, when the airplane goes, and first there's this cloud layer, but eventually, and we are in the blue of the infinite sky. And then we know that clouds are not everything. In fact, they arise and disperse in that vastness, which we call the sky or the space. And that's what meditation is for. So this is, it addresses the being liberated from the cloud layer and actually achieving the limitless luminosity of the sky, of that space of awareness. In one of the most recent teachings, Rinpoche spoke of autonomy, which we do not possess when we are under the sway of ignorance, clouds. When we are in the midst of blind self-grasping, endlessly creating samsara, endlessly creating suffering for ourselves and for others, because ego is always happening in relationship to something. Ego is always fluctuating between hope and fear. I want this, I need this, I crave this, or I don't want this, I reject it, I want to be away from this. We're always fluctuating within these 2 things as long as we are in the scope of just ego thinking, being dominated by that level of mind. As everything in the world is interconnected and all things occur as continuous events which are linked to infinite invisible things and beings. So when we approach this net of being, this infinite interconnectedness of being with our ego, we are always creating samsara more and more. We may think that something insignificant occurs here, me ignoring someone, me saying a hurtful thing to someone here, but the chains and the links of the invisible chains and links of infinite interconnections, what samsara is, are reverberating through space, and we will be encountering those effects in lives to come. So Rinpoche said that when awareness lets go of the ego, of the attachment to me and mine, awareness becomes liberated. It's like when the plane goes through the cloud layer into the open blue sky. Awareness becomes liberated. And likewise, the concept of self and other collapses. It doesn't mean that we stop functioning on a relative level, on the relative level of truth. But what happens when that collapse happens is that we can see all samsaric ordinary things happening within the big picture. We remind ourselves next time we go out and the sky is filled with clouds, we remind ourselves, yes, these clouds are there, but above them is my awareness, this pristine, open, infinite, luminous space. And these clouds are only happening here and now because of that space of awareness. We don't identify with the clouds. We don't identify with this momentary. We look at everything within this great spaciousness, and that's what it means to practice. I'm not pitted against others. Rather, I see that their energy is being expressed in convergent patterns of events and relationships. I can look at myself like that and others. I can watch this all like a play or a film with being identifying with greater awareness, with the space of awareness. I can become aware of my quality of energy as it emerges in these relational patterns. I can free my energy from the afflictive patterns that we call habitual patterns, because they're my constructs and I don't have to be driven by them. I can have my autonomy by identifying with awareness and being in awareness when I engage. If there's no me, there's no one to be insulted. So it doesn't matter if someone says harsh words, because if there's no me, I'm not being criticized. I see someone who is criticizing within the grasp of ignorance, within the grasp of anger. I see them as a person who's being afflicted. I see a person who's just afflicted, who's acting on their afflictions. But if there's no me, there's nothing to be wounded. I don't have this garbage to deal with as a post experience. If there's no me, no one can insult me or say harsh words or anger me. When a degree of clarity and freedom is obtained, we simply see the afflicted, ignorant person who expresses themselves through harsh speech, through unvirtuous actions, much like a child who is trying to dominate and bully other children. We observe, but not simply with a distant, cold outlook. We observe with the view, the Buddhist view, and compassion automatically arises. So if you go into an office and you have a bully or your boss who says like horrible things because that person is in a continuous state of that mental affliction, we don't take it as a thing against us. What we do is we observe that person as that person whose energy expresses that way because they are in that continuous state of affliction. And when we observe that within the space of awareness, our reaction is not to engage in them and get burned and then go aflame and anger ourselves. Our reaction is to look at that person on fire and kind of bring out the water hose, and that's what I mean by compassion. So we look at them as a person. We watch them like a sick person, a person who cannot stop, a person who's not really in control of one's faculties and the way that their energy spills into the world in their relationships and in their speech and body, speech and mind. And when we look at that, instead of engaging on the me level, well, he said this to me, she did this to me. Now we look at it and in the view of the practitioner in connecting to the big space of awareness, our compassion naturally arises because we just see a person on fire. We're not engaging with them. He said this to me, she said this to me, he did this to, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean that we kind of give up or give in, throw in the towel. We're very aware, but we are aware out of that greater awareness and freedom where we're not engaging with them like a kid bullying another kid. We are the adult in the room and we leave the baby mind behind. So this is really where the four immeasurables kinds of starts, because when we engage in the four immeasurables, we are already past that state where we engage. He said this to me, she said this to me, she did this to me, he did this to me. No, the four immeasurables starts when we already made the vow and we already identify with the space of awareness. We leave the baby mind behind at home or behind, period, permanently. We retire it. We go into our adulthood as practitioners. We are always identifying with the space of awareness, and we're looking at everything without this filter of me and mine. He attacked me, he said this to me, etc., etc. Afflictions are simply how we express our energy, mind. That's mind is energy. But all energy and all its forms and expressions move within a space of awareness. So if we identify with a spacious, open, luminous space of awareness rather than our ego, its judgment and reactivity, which is ego is judgment and reactivity, because it's always like against me. I'm always pitted in this cage. We see events happen, but we don't engage in the world through the ego, but rather through our wisdom and openness of awareness. And so naturally compassion arises. We do not say he was mean to me. We say he's an afflicted person under the sway of ignorance, and its expression of harshness and anger has to do with his affliction. We don't take on that illness onto ourselves and become burnt or ill ourselves. We just observe it, and then we can act with the proper mind, because we're not just reacting, we're acting. We are autonomous when we're acting. That is what is meant by practice. Our baby mind doesn't say he did this to me, she said this to me. We rather simply see an afflicted person who is suffering and creating more suffering for oneself and others. That is what samsara is. And when we see with clarity, just like that, compassion naturally arises. If we see a person on fire, in throes of anger, addiction, jealousy, etc., how can compassion not arise? How can we be practitioners and continue to say, my mother is this, my father is this, my sister is this, my child is this? Where is the practice? Where is the clarity? And where is the compassion? Because without those things, we're not practitioners. We're just like dilettantes, and we're wasting time. We might as well do something else, get a massage or something else. We're not here. This is not the space of where we vent. This is the space of where we replace the baby mind for awareness. So this is why we're here. We see karma unfold and dissolve into the space of awareness without being stuck in its mind. Please become aware in your practice of the space of awareness, the true ground, and distinguish it from the layer known as a conceptual ego-grasping mind. And then bring that awareness to all your living situations. That is practice. That's not spacing out on the cushion. Practice to liberate awareness from the chains of the ego grasping and ignorance, to act in the world through this liberated energy that is capable of handling everything. And this is when we use the four immeasurables. So I do this, and it's something that Michael does, and we want to recommend this. We've spoken about Tonglen, practice on the spot. Use the four immeasurables, and we'll get into it next segment more in identifying what are these four immeasurables. But four immeasurables are not the baby ego mind. The four immeasurables is when we commit to practice and liberating our mind and disrupting the chain of creating suffering for ourselves and others, because using that baby ego mind. Use four immeasurables on the spot when you are in the world. When you see a person, look at them, and instead of going, he's fat, he's this, he's that, discard all that crap and say, may you have happiness and the causes of happiness. May you be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, etc., etc. Look at people and then face them through the filter of the four immeasurables. Use practice. That's how you practice on the spot. Replace your ordinary judging little mind that's always pivoting you against the other person. He's prettier, he's taller, he's younger, he's more rich. Instead of that crap, take that all away and throw it in the dustbin and use the four immeasurables. And then on the next time, we will continue with the four immeasurables. We are trying to replace that narrow cage mind for the space of awareness, and that a space of awareness has skillful means through which we connect and express in the world our energy, our awareness. And so this is like the Tonglen practice. It is a real practice to be used in the world, not just to rattle these words out, but this is what the space of practice looks like when we get off the cushion. Because on the cushion, we try to distinguish between the spaciousness and this little cage. And we try to, like when we get off the cushion, to always be connected to the spaciousness, to the space of awareness. And when we're walking around and interacting in the world, that's what we're doing, especially in difficult situation. When someone is, saying bad things, look at them and have compassion, because they are an afflicted person, and use the form as they're saying horrible things. You're saying in your mind, may you have happiness in the cause of him. May you be free from suffering. And then you can know that you are practicing. That's how you actually know you are doing practice, because you're engaging in it. And so that's what I wanted to start after our absence. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you very much. See you next time. Okay. So with that in mind, and all these things that she was saying, we can take that into our meditation today. Basically, just in terms of awareness, and cultivating awareness, because that's what we're working with. We're working with our mind to cultivate awareness, so we can bring awareness into all aspects of our life, every moment of our life. I think it's helpful if you start to see everything that happens in your life as an opportunity for practice, and that things are happening, and as things unfold and happen in your life, they're there because they're meant to be there. They're happening because of causes and conditions related to your own karma. And you have a choice to ignore certain things that happen in front of you. It could be as simple as like somebody's coming into your building and you're in a rush and you want to get in the elevator first and you don't want to have to wait for them. Things like that where this person's slow and there's another elevator next to it and they can easily take it and you don't want to wait because you have to. But bring awareness where you're saying, I can actually just have patience in this situation, help this person. Maybe they have a package. I'm talking very simple things. Other situations can be fraught with a lot more emotions and a lot more difficulty and things, but every situation in life has an opportunity for you to apply awareness to, and to really see what's going on, because our minds are very wired with habitual tendencies. Our reactions, our emotions, our interactions, the way we interact, the way we process information, interpret information, a lot of it's based on very habitual patterns that we're not even aware of that are there. We just assume that that's how we see it. That's how it is. And when you start to really apply some awareness to situations in life, interactions, you interacting with the world, you start to see those patterns. Oh, this is very repetitive. This is me wanting to be liked. This is me wanting to be right. This is me wanting to be the special one. This is me, defending this idea, whatever. But if we start to apply awareness, we can kind of slow things down a bit and actually see what's at play and let some more space into your mind. And into your mind is what's interacting with the world, right? Your mind is is your interface, between you and life, and you and the world, you and existence. So let's get into our posture. We're sitting. You can sit. Usually, use a cushion is good to get your hips either in line or above your knees. You can sit cross-legged. You could do one leg here, like a half lotus, they call that, or full lotus if you're very flexible. Whatever's really comfortable. If you can't sit on the floor, you can use a chair, but make sure your feet are on the flat on the floor and your back is straight. Back straight is important. Not rigid, not like a military thing, but you know, just kind of relaxed. Shoulders not back, but just straight. Head is a little bit tilted. Hands, we can do this left hand palm up and the right hand the back of the hand and then curved. You could do this, you could do this. Easy. It's a posture that without a lot of tension is what we're trying to get at, but just enough tension to keep things erect and moving properly, energy moving properly through your body. Your tongue pressed to the where your teeth meet the roof of your mouth, not pressed but resting. Lips usually closed, but the teeth are a little bit apart. We're breathing through our nose. Unless you can't, then breathe through your mouth. In usually Tibetan Buddhist tradition, meditate with our eyes open. And what you do is your gaze should be a little bit slightly down, like kind of like looking almost down the bridge of your nose, but not focused on anything intensely and not spacing out, just resting on whatever's in front of you. And the breath is we're not doing deep breaths, we're not doing shallow breaths, they're kind of mindful breaths. Let's do 3 breaths like that in this pose. Now, for those of you who are new, focus your attention on the place where the air moves, but right above, between your nostrils and your upper lip. And what's going to happen is you're going to start to think. And when you think, if you're very new here, catch yourself thinking, realize you're thinking, say to yourself, back to the breath, and focus your attention again on that space. For those of you who have been doing this for a while and have been with us for a while, we like to use this visualization as the mind being this very vast, clear blue sky. And you're visualizing that as your mind. And you're focusing your attention on that. And then when when a thought happens, because the mind thinks, that's what it does, you recognize the thought. You don't follow it like follow the story of it. You know what I mean? Like, that guy said yesterday, on the train said something so mean. I should have said this. I should have done that. I should find out where he lives. I think I know where he lives. He lives in one of my, don't follow the train. Just realize, oh, yesterday that was unpleasant, and leave it where it is. Don't push it away. That's a bad thought. I shouldn't be thinking of that. No, you just notice what's there and leave it there. The awareness of the thought will allow you to leave it there. And we use that visualization of the cloud arising in the sky. The cloud is the thought that arises in the sky, and when we apply awareness to it, it dissolves back into the sky, leaving no trace in that limitless clarity of the blue sky. The thought does the same thing. The dissipation of the thought is gone. It may return. It may be a little bit different. It may not be, but it does not have any kind of permanence associated with it. So let's begin. I may talk through some of it. Maybe I won't. So I notice a thought I have. I don't know if I'll be able to answer questions. Insecure. Leave that there. Watch it disappear. Watch it dissipate back into that sky-like nature of mind. And continue. Almost rest yourself in that natural great peace, that sky-like clarity, calm, limitless, nothing but clarity, nothing but calm. Sky, mind. Thought comes. Is it raining out? I don't know. Leave that thought there. Back to the breath, back to that sky. Rest in it. I have a couple of important things to do. I recognize I'm thinking about them. I'm not going to follow it and make a list of what it is. I'm going to leave that thought where it is. Back to the breath. Back to the sky-like nature of mind. Rest in it. If you find your mind is particularly busy today, you can try lowering the angle of your gaze. That may calm things down a little bit. Or if you find yourself particularly sluggish, a little bit out of it, fatigued or something, you can raise the angle of your gaze. A lot of this is finding like a middle, the tension of the body, not too loose, not too tight. The tension of the gaze, not spaced out, yet not focused intensely. The mind itself, not dull, sluggish, lethargic, and not busy. We're finding this equilibrium, if you will. If you're feeling a lot of tension in the body, need to shift, that's okay. Shift your posture a little bit, settle back in, back to the breath. I got an unpleasant text from someone today. That was kind of disturbing my mind. I have to deal with it later. I'm not going to worry about it now. I'm not getting into the details. Leave it where it is. Back to the breath. Back to the sky, like nature of mind, rest, ease, calm. Back to the breath. Great, thank you. A couple of things on the Solidago Productions website, solidagoproductions.com. There's a list of teachers. If Buddhism is of interest to you, we encourage you to really seek out a teacher from an authentic lineage. We teach meditation here and we kind of discuss Buddhism. We're not Buddhist teachers by any stretch of the imagination. We're speaking, kind of talking about what our teacher tells us and speaking a little bit about our experiences. But making an authentic connection and a real with a authentic teacher is really essential. Um, and This kind of practice, not just meditation, but like Dharma practice, Buddhist practice, really, and starting to work with your mind, really demands you to be brutally honest with yourself. Um, which is a good thing, I think. But I think that's really essential, an essential quality of its nature. So with that, let's go to some questions if we can. Talking about the bardo. Bardo is a space that in between, space in between, right? So there's different bardos. There's bardo of sleep, when your consciousness is not waking, it's between the night waking consciousness and the day waking consciousness. You go into this sleep consciousness, which is, or unconsciousness, but you're never completely unconscious because the mind is always there, even if you're asleep. um, there's the bardo even between thoughts, between one thought and another, there's a gap. Bardo is like a gap. And then there's the gap between worlds, between lives. So in between uh, this life, our consciousness doesn't die when we die. It moves on to another form. It could be a human. It could be an animal. Or if you become enlightened, you can kind of go beyond those things. But in between the next incarnation, if you will, there's a rebirth. There's the bardo is, you know, what your where your consciousness is. It's not really a place, but it's what your consciousness is being resting in, you know, before this next uh place. And this person's asking that, it's comparing some kind of more Christian way, or you know, more looking at the world, that if you don't do this, you're, you know, you'll go to hell. If you sin, you'll go, you know, if you don't sin, you go to heaven. And I think what you're asking about is not so much bardo as it is karma. Karma is the law of cause and effect, really, right? So that every action has a reaction. In some ways, it's very similar to, you know, science in a way, and that you can't expect a positive outcome from a negative action. Um, Basically, this body we have now, when it's over, when this life is over, whatever kind of karma we've created through our positive, negative actions will have a fruition in the next life. It has a fruition in this life as well. You know what I mean? You can look at it in very gross, simple terms. If I, you know, get angry with my partner in the morning, I'm gonna probably have carry some of that anger into the rest of my day. You know what I mean? There's a residual effect of that energy. My partner's gonna go into the world and maybe, you know, have negative interactions with people based on that exchange, and that kind of creates, you know, this web of interdependence. Well, there is a web of interdependence, you know, in the universe, but this is going to infuse itself into that, you know, into the world. So my partner's interaction during the day is going to be infused with that, and maybe will continue some negative energies, negative interactions that go move into other people, and other people bringing that, and vice versa. There's Karma is not a cosmic judge or punishment system. It's like, you know, you reap what you sow. You know what I mean? Uh, it's not about morality per se. You know, you know, Buddhism does talk about ethical discipline, because you can't really have any kind of spiritual path or kind of clarity of mind if you're engaged in really negative behaviors, like, you know, if you're abusing people and things like that. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if that clarifies it. I mean, that's a really big topic. There's a teaching in our archives, which is Meditation with Michael Imperioli YouTube. Uh, and there's a class on karma that Dr. Vesna Wallace led, which might really help you with that. How, regarding the bully example, how do you view them like a child who is trying to dominate without being condescending or patronizing? You become aware that they're under the, you know, the yoke of their afflictive emotions, you know, and they should be an object of compassion rather than condescension or patronizing. Compassion, you know, in Buddhist perspective, is not pity. Compassion also often can be this, like, oh, that person's poorer than me, um, poor person, you know, I want to give to, you know, it's it's not that. It's much more about respect, actually. You know, respecting that we're all human beings with our own afflictive emotions that we're, dealing with on or not dealing with on certain levels. So I think you should, think about it in terms of compassion. Would you say inflated ego is a result of lack of emotional space? Um, Inflated ego is, um, I don't know if it's a lack of emotional space, but it's a lack of awareness, because what you're doing is really um, fixating the self as this completely separate entity from the rest of the universe and the rest of the world. When in a Buddhist point of view, in a Buddhist view, uh, existence is completely interdependent. So inflated ego means really fixated on the ego, right? Everything's about me. Everything's about, and you justify it, whatever, for whatever reasons, intellectually, you know, uh, maybe in a Darwinian sense. I need to win. I need to be better. I need to protect. I need to, um, be competitive and all those things. And it's not really looking at, I mean, it might be, emotional space. I would say a lack of space, period. Not necessarily emotional. Space in the mind to kind of take in other people, take in the fact of interdependence and dependent arising and impermanence and all those things. Do you have something you tell yourself to calm down when being triggered by someone else's words? It's very easy to get triggered by someone else's words. It's very easy to get triggered when you're criticized, when someone doesn't agree with your views politically or socially or whatever, aesthetically or otherwise. Very, very easy. I don't really tell myself something, but I try to be aware that I'm getting triggered because of my fixation on the ego. That it's not necessarily, for me to get triggered, I mean, you're actually kind of you have to have you're almost kind of honoring what they're saying in a way, right? You're almost having a certain stake in what they're saying, even if in fact, it's not true, but somehow it holds enough legitimacy for you to react. So better to just like we did in meditation, look at what the mind is doing. Watch yourself reacting and just say, I don't have to. I can just have some space there and let that go. And know that that's not real, and know that my reaction to it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. The way I've always reacted. It doesn't have to be the habitual. I mean, this takes practice. It's not, I can't give you a magic word, tell yourself stop or something like that. It takes practice of trying it and meditating and then bringing that practice into life and becoming aware in these situations. It's not a quick fix. I think we talk about this a lot, and I think a lot of our world and the information we get is really geared towards a quick fix. Look how quickly media moves and news moves and clickbait and information moves so quickly all the time. And we're always looking for, if you eat this, you're going to feel better. And if uh, pop culture and self-help and things like that, um, very much always offers this kind of quick fix. If you believe this, it's going to change the way you think. Things don't happen without a lot of work. We're talking about really working with, like I said, really being honest with ourselves, starting to really unpack how our mind works, how it's been working, our whole lives, how we've been reacting and interacting to situations. And this takes time. We have to be patient. How would you approach a situation with an old friend you've had since childhood? They've gotten into a new relationship, had a child, and will not get vaccinated and are surrounded by a right-wing political community. Your old friend does not understand that you're not interested in spending time with them anymore, and they will not stop contacting you. You gotta create stronger boundaries if you really don't want to deal with them. You have to figure out ways of blocking with them, or you have to just be really, really courageous and explicit and just saying, I have no interest in seeing you anymore. You know. At the same time, you can also, see them as an object of compassion, maybe do Tonglen for them, and, take, that practice. There's one of our archived classes that goes into the details of teaching that I'm not going to right now because we don't have the time. But, um, you know, boundaries are good, boundaries are really good. There's certain relationships that are just too, one-sided or toxic, and you outgrow them, you don't need them in your life. It's fine to, if you feel like it's run its course and you need the space and the distance, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Sometimes I feel being awareness has made me too analytical and less sensitive around even the ones I love. I don't know. I mean, I don't know your practice. I don't know what you're doing. Um, I would encourage you, uh, meditation on its own is good, but I only really know meditation through a Buddhist perspective. I only know meditation through its as a method of uh, the Buddhist teachings. So those things go hand in hand. So you're seeing your awareness should, if you're practicing Dharma, um, should not be necessarily analytical, or there should be uh, elements of compassion and love. Those things, you may need to be working on as well. Cultivating those qualities. You know, um, because when the mind calms down and the mind has space, if you're sorting out, okay, how to be more present, how to be more generous, you're cultivating virtue, right? Generosity, kindness, patience, things like that. And that's what we're cultivating also in Buddhist practice. And those things should infuse themselves into your awareness. So when you're dealing with people, those things arise as well. So maybe though you need to focus on some of those teachings. The paramitas. The paramitas are, in Buddhism, are like virtuous activity, right? They're actually translated as the word perfection, perfection, uh, generosity, proper discipline, patience, effort, concentration, and insight or wisdom. Those are the things that we cultivate. The birds are singing. It's a beautiful sound. I struggle with focusing on the positive. I have to keep returning on to my breath. Should I push away the positive focus because it's a distraction? Well, because we're not. Listen, if you want to go outside and listen to the birds and look at the day, that's fine. I mean, we're doing meditation practice here. We're not, um, um, you know what I mean? We're not just sitting on the couch listening to music or listening to the birds outside. We're working with our mind in a very specific way. So if the birds are distracting you, it's not about the positivity or negativity of the birds. It's about your mind being open and being quiet. What's the best book to read to learn about Buddhism for a beginner? There's a list of books on the website, solidagoproductions.com. The Power of Mind is on that list. That's a good one. How can I stop worrying about what's out of my control and fearing the outcome of my efforts? Well, I think you could start by accepting that pretty much a lot of things are out of our control, that life is impermanent and completely unpredictable. Um, I have no guarantee that my heart will not stop beating in 10 seconds. And you know what I mean? And I'll drop dead. There's no guarantee of that. I mean, it's not likely, but you know, my house could collapse in 5 minutes and, this class would end early. But you know what I mean? You have to accept that life is, you know, completely unpredictable. We like to think that we want to create stability, of course, and comfort and security, but at the same time, you have to on some level understand that. How do you forgive yourself if you allow your ego to drive your words and actions in a disagreement of others? Well, first you should forgive. First you should um, confess what you did, either to them or someone else. Or if you can, to them, you can take responsibility for what you did. You can apologize. You can say, I'm sorry and I was wrong, and resolve never to do it again. Um, you know, uh, that's the best way. And when you do make a mistake and you do act negatively and you see the results right away, it's a really good teaching, because you can say to yourself, I don't want to behave like this in the future. And that example to you of when you went off the rails and you did something, whether maybe with good justification, and it caused negative results and it made you feel bad and you hurt other people, you can, if you really take responsibility and you realize where it went wrong and why, and the negative effects on you, and you make a resolve and say, I don't want to behave like this again. That's the best thing you could do. Do you have to pay for somebody to teach you about Buddhism? Well, you don't pay in this class. Most times when you go to teachings, uh, you give whatever you want. Sometimes if you're going to go to a retreat, um, there are, you have to pay for you may be going for a few days. You pay for the facilities, for the food, you have to contribute. Usually there's a donation, because that's the only way Dharma centers can stay open, is from the donations of the people who support it. But I've always been in situations where you donate what you can, even if there's certain retreats where, say, it costs $400 for the week to go, and you're going to stay in a dormitory or something, and you're going to eat in their cafeteria, and it covers that thing. Usually there's scholarships for people who are financially, have difficult finances and need help. Usually there's always a way to do it. If there's like some kind of thing, if send me $500 and I'm going to do 5 classes a week, that often can be a little bit, I have a little suspicion around things like that. If we have trouble focusing on breath, would you recommend focusing on tactile situation, tactile sensation? No, because that could be a distraction. You're going to have trouble focusing on breath. This is difficult. It's not something that we just do and it's easy, and some people are great at it from the beginning. I've never met anybody who's great at this from the beginning. It takes a lot of practice. If you have trouble focusing on the breath, try focusing on the visualization. What advice would you give to someone who's surrounded by ego in corporate America and struggles to maintain awareness? I'd say dive into these teachings. Find a Buddhist teacher, commit yourself to the path, and, I shouldn't really say those things. When Buddhists are not we don't like proselytize. We're not trying to convert people or things like that. But you're asking me, basically on how to deal with difficulties in your life. I mean, I find these teachings to be very, very, very valuable. You know, I mean, I can't give you advice outside of that. I mean, that's why we do these classes. You know what I'm saying? Meditation, in combination with studying of the Dharma and working with a teacher, can give you a lot of help in this problem. How often do you think I should be meditating? Well, I don't know your practice. I don't know how long you've been doing it or how familiar you are. I think in the beginning, it's good to do short sessions, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. It helps to do it every day. You see the best results when you do it every day. If you miss a day because you're traveling or you're exceptionally busy, don't beat yourself up for it. But if you could find a way to do it every day, that's the best. Is meditation supposed to stop continuous inner dialogue or learn to work with it? The latter, learn to work with it. Your dialogue is not going to stop. Someone's talking about focusing the eyes. You can, sometimes it helps if you look at something. Say there's an inspiring. I mean, if you're a Buddhist, you might have a picture of your teacher or the Buddha, or you might have like a flower, or you might have it might be the view out the window. You can use something like that, um, just to kind of rest your gaze on. That's totally fine. Okay. Is there punishment in the bardo? No, there's not punishment. You reap what you sow. Like, I mean, imagine somebody like Hitler who, caused the death uh, of millions and millions of people, right? That energy of that negativity, that immense amount of negative energy that he cultivated and created and reaped, that's going to follow him. So it's not a punishment, it's his own creation, right? That's not punishment. That's what you've created. There's nobody who's saying he did this, so we're going to send him this punishment. Buddha is not a god. There's no god, Buddha god pantheon in Buddhism that says, "Oh boy, this guy, you know, did this. We have to get. We got to make sure he suffers." It's not that. You suffer because of the actions that you create, right? Um, in Buddhist perspective, whatever you're suffering from now in this life is a result of things that you've done either earlier in this life or in past lives. People have a big problem accepting that, but that is a Buddhist point of view. In Buddhism, if all phenomena are considered to be like a dream and do not truly exist dependently outside the body, how does karma really work? When you say like a dream, it mean we're saying that nothing really is permanent, right? Even on a quantum physics level, we're not this solid human beings that the physical body that we think we're made up of particles that are, waves of energy or something like that. So what it's really saying is that we don't exist the way we think we do, right? We think ourselves as separate, we think ourselves as solid, we think of ourselves as permanent kind of thing, uh, and we ignore that. Um, we exist interdependently with everything else. And that's how karma works, because every action has a reaction among that interconnected web of things. What are your thoughts on therapy as a path towards self-awareness? I think therapy is really good if you have, certain problems and if you find the right therapist. Um, I've found people who have had a lot of success in therapy. I found people who've been in therapy for 20 years and are still dealing with the exact same issues and have never, um, and are still kind of possessed by the same limitations and burdens. And I found people who have found a lot of insight and relief and healing through therapy. Uh, I think therapy in conjunction with practice is a good thing. When you reach a point in your practice where you feel you are outgrowing your friends and your life, do you lean into the practice more? Sure, sure. How do you recommend finding a teacher? Well, you can go on YouTube and there's lots of teachings we have a list of teachers on the website, like I said, Solidago Productions. And then you can go and watch some of their videos and see if you connect. And then you can kind of Google their schedules and see if they're going to be anywhere near you. Or you can also attend teachings, live teachings through Zoom now. And you can kind of get the same benefit you would get almost like being in person with a teacher. And you can take vows through online now. You can even do empowerments, Vajrayana Buddhist empowerments and things like that. So there's a lot of this miracle of modern technology has really kind of allowed us to have a lot easier access to teachers. Why not deep breaths? I think you can take a deep breath if you're feeling if you need a blast of oxygen, but like I said, we're kind of in the middle here. The tension of the body, we're finding a middle ground. The breaths, we're finding a middle ground. The mind, we're finding a middle ground. We're not going to either extreme. That's what we're trying to be. Especially for a beginner, would you say it is okay to start with a guided meditation like app? I don't know anything about meditation apps, but if you tried and you like it, why not? Do Buddhists take Adderall? Probably. There's no, there's no prohibition to, taking medication. Um, Buddhism, like I said, there's certain ethical discipline that has to be adhered to. Any spiritual path, you know what I mean? You can't be abusive, you can't be cheating people, you can't be, a cruel human being and expect to have some kind of spiritual progress, right? Um, Even things like marijuana or alcohol or things like that. You may have a teacher. Buddhism is also not one big thing where there's like the leader who tells everybody this is how it's got to be. It's much more about your own relationship to your teacher and their lineage, and you connect through that. There are some teachers who may say, I prefer if my students don't drink alcohol or take drugs. There are some who, leave that up to you. And it's not like the Buddhists can't. There are Buddhists who eat meat. There are Buddhists who are vegetarian. You know, um, Buddhism is much more about working with your own mind rather than kind of dictating on how you should live your life. Buddhism basically tells you there's certain actions that if you take, they're going to cause negative reactions probably, and you're going to suffer because of that. And your mind is not going to be clear, and your mind is going to be, you know, affected by that, you're going to be, there's going to be pain, and there's going to be suffering, and there's going to be those afflictive emotions that are going to be stirred up, which is what you don't want to do. So you can, if you don't have attachment to alcohol, or I mean, Adderall is a different thing. That's a prescription drug. I'm talking in general about, other things. If you don't have an attachment to alcohol, if you're not an alcoholic, it's not getting in your way. If you have a glass of wine with dinner, why would that be a problem? You know what I mean? Buddhism is not saying, no, you can't do this, or it has to be this way. It's really about, it's not a theistic religion. I don't see it as a religion at all, to be honest. I see it much more as about as a science of mind, really, and a way of working with the mind. How do you encourage your partner to participate in practice with you? I think that rather than trying to convince them that it's good, the best thing we can do for not just our partners but people around us is to be an example in a way. And I don't mean by example being telling them and showing it off. It's just like you practice, and if you apply yourself, and study Dharma and get a teacher, and you meditate and you apply yourself, there's going to be movement and change. There will be. I can't say how much or exactly how or what, but there will be. And the people around you will notice that. And that may inspire them to practice. Okay, we are going to close by saying we dedicate the merit. So when you do any kind of virtuous activity, positive activity, like today, sitting together in meditation, rising our motivation, making aspirations for all the benefit of all beings to have happiness. So you're creating a certain positive karmic energy. What we're going to do with that big ball of positive karmic energy, that virtuous activity that we created and engaged in today, we're going to take that, and rather it just be with us, whatever, 150 people today or whatever. We are going to say, we're going to take this and dedicate the merit from today, and dedicate it to the benefit of all beings by saying this prayer. By this merit, may all beings attain the state of enlightenment and conquer the enemies of faults and delusions. May they be liberated from this ocean of samsara and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. So it's almost like taking this drop of water and putting it into the ocean. So it becomes the ocean. And we're honoring the view of Buddhism by saying existence is interdependent, and all beings are connected to us, and in an ultimate sense of reality, and we're going to dedicate that merit and spread it out, honoring that view of Buddhism and interdependence and dependent arising, dependent origination. We'll see you next week. Thank you to Nick Solidio and to Victoria for helping us out today. Thank you all.